Hey, welcome to Reloved Guitars and welcome to this special edition videos covering the Reloved Guitars 5-step and 4-step setup. Now the 5-step setup is for the typical electric guitar, which is not shown here on the bench. Let's just redo that. 5-step setup is for your typical electric guitar, and this setup that I'm going to do with this guitar is going to provide the photographs for the ebook that I'm currently rewriting. I've written it once already, but it's I'm doing another version. So in this video what I'm going to show you is each of the 5 steps in detail. This is obviously just an intro for this one, and each of those steps, those 5 steps for the electric guitar, is going to be a separate video which you can have a look at. If you buy the ebook, you then be able to have a look at that step, not only up close and in photographs with some contextualizing information, useful information to help you understand what's going on, that you can read beforehand. Then in that ebook there'll be step-by-step guide with pictures showing you exactly what to do to get the great setup that this method allows you to do. And then after that there's the video, which is especially for you to watch through and see exactly how it's done in practice. And nice thing about that is you can either watch that beforehand if you're that kind of person, or you can leave it till afterwards to review how what you did matches up against what I did, and see where you might have improved on what I did. So in this electric guitar setup, we're going to use this SX Stratocaster, which I bought the other day especially for this. And SX is a Chinese-made Stratocaster copy. And you can see that in every respect it's very, very, very Strat-like. There's nothing about this that's unusual. The only thing that separates it out from a typical Squire looking thing is the characteristic SX headstock, which they've obviously done to avoid any copyright issues with Fender. But what you get for your money, and there isn't a lot of money, is a typical budget electric guitar which many youngsters would start out with, and might have been something similar to what you started out with. It's a bolt-on neck with a maple, nice maple neck with a fairly thick, good quality rosewood fingerboard. It has quite a flat radius. I measured it and I think it's about 16. It's an unusually flat radius for a Stratocaster, so it's not typical of a Stratocaster. But in terms of the body, we have what's probably a basswood body with a nice dark sunburst on it, the typical electronics, tremolo cover on the back here, neck plate with the 4 bolts, all the chamfers and cutaways for the body, and then we have the 3 single coil pickups, volume 2 tones, 5-way switch, jack plug here, and then your adjustable 6-screw tremolo bridge here, which you can either have locked down or floating. So this is, in every respect, this is a very, very standard budget guitar, and this guitar cost me £65. It's not new. It looks pretty new. Has a little bit of wear on the frets, and it came with a bone nut, which is this one here, and this nut has been added, and it shows evidence of when the person knocked it off, they took a ledge of rosewood on the far side of it off at the same time, so that was glued back in with a step, and I've basically just sanded that out, flattened it, so it doesn't stand out so much. Doesn't do anything, doesn't affect the playing in any way. So for this setup we've got this fairly good condition, pretty good condition, bog standard Stratocaster electric guitar of the kind of money that most teenagers, parents probably can afford to get them started in playing the guitar. And for that money, what you get is, typically if you're buying this second hand, let's say, you've got a dead set of strings, you've got a high action, reasonably high action down at this end here, even though somebody's put a new nut on, because they've obviously read that bone nut improves the tone, but we've still got a high first fret action, which makes squeezing it down here quite hard, and there's some intonation issues when you squeeze these notes down. That's one of the problems. And then at this end we've also got a pretty high action here at this end, which obviously makes playing individual notes quite difficult, and is often one of the things that makes playing bar chords very difficult at this end, especially for a newcomer to playing the guitar. High action at this end and at this end will both tire the newcomer out, or any player for that matter, but it's actually particularly tiring, and we don't often think of it this way. It's particularly tiring down at this end. So it's so standard. It actually sounds quite nice plugged in. The pickups aren't that bad, but what interests me is obviously taking this guitar and taking you through the steps of how to turn this bog standard, not very appealing guitar at the moment. There's nothing about this I really like. It's competent, but it's badly set up, and therefore as a result it's not nice to play. So what I'm going to do is take you through the steps of making this into a really nice playing guitar with a low, fast, light, easy, all those nice words, action, and I'm going to show you how to do it with inexpensive tools, and following these 5 steps that I've repeated. Just to reassure you, I've repeated more than 250 times now, with great success on just about every brand kind of guitar that you can send to me. So the great thing about this method, this 5-step method, if you want to do this, you can do it on pretty much any guitar. There are, as long as the guitar has frets, a neck, a truss rod, strings, and kind of basically follows the basic format of an electric guitar, the steps in this setup will improve the way it plays, because they are kind of focused around the fretboard and the geometry between the nut, the bridge, the neck, and the strings, and of course the frets in that equation. So as long as it's got those things in it, you can use this method to set up guitars of any kind. Okay, so what we'll do is I just quickly introduce you to the 5 steps. I've written them down on my whiteboard here, which we'll refer to throughout the video. The first step is setting the action. Conventionally, guitars like this come to you with the action set as low, usually set as low here as they will go before you start running into choking and buzzing. I don't quite know if that's the case on this one. What we're going to do is we're going to choose the action we want first, which means we're going to lower it to a nice 1.5 millimeters maximum at this end. We're going to take the first fret action at the nut right down to 0.3 maximum. I'm going to make sure the nut slots are really well cut and smooth, and run the strings pass freely through them. And then we're going to set a little tiny bit of relief in the neck, so that we've got the bridge action, the nut action, and the neck just how we'd like it to play, really light and fast. Now what we're likely to find at that point is that once we've set that action, the frets that we've actually got in reality are probably going to be a bit too uneven underneath that action to let it play cleanly. We'll only know when we set that action, but it's likely that we will if we find the strings then won't play very well. The purpose of this setup is to make the neck and these frets comply with the action that we've set, not the other way around, that we have to live with the best action that the frets will allow us. So it's a taking control over it, and that's something that, as you'll see and as you practice it, will take between 2 and 3 hours for a standard electric guitar. And I think it's always worth mentioning that that's when you've done it a couple of times and you see how much focus and skill it takes to get it right, and to precision or care to get it right, then you'll start to understand or get an idea why it's not done in the factory or the retailer or the shop, because there isn't a machine that's going to do it automatically for you, and who's going to pay the extra premium for somebody to do that work. And are the average teenage buyers or their parents going to be comfortable paying an extra £75 to £100 on top of the current price of the guitar? So the answer probably in a price sensitive market is probably no. Okay, so first of all we'll set the action, which is those 3 things. Stage 2 then, we'll level the frets using a curved fret leveling tool, and we'll level the frets with the neck under load with the strings on, and that's quite a departure from the normal way of doing things, and we'll get into why that is as we get to it. But suffice to say that it gives you a very accurate fret leveling, and it does it with the removal of the least amount of metal on the frets necessary to get the playing action we want to play correctly. And that's great if you're it's great for new guitars, because you don't want to take off any more metal than is absolutely necessary, but it's also particularly important on older guitars where the frets may already be worn. So we'll fret level. Once we've leveled the frets, then we'll round them off so that they're nice and arch shaped again. Once we've done that, we'll sand them and polish them out so they're ready to play again. All nice and level, all nice and nicely curved and all nicely shiny. Then step 3, once we've done that, we can take everything off the guitar if we want from the ground up, every component, clean it from the ground up, make sure everything works, check for faults, check for electrical faults under there. And in checking for any faults, it's great. You can look for structural stuff. That's pretty straightforward. When you see it, you'll be able to tell whether there's something seriously wrong, if something's split or broken. But in particular at that stage, we'll look for electrical problems, and they tend to be around the areas that suffer the most movement. So you've got knobs that move and eventually they come loose and spin. You've got switches have always been hit, and in particular the jack plug is always subject to quite significant leverage or lever forces the way that the jack plug sits in it. And so these are where you find movement. Those are all areas where something's likely to go wrong. So we'll look at all of those during the cleaning and fixing small faults part of the setup. And it's something that I always do for customers' guitar to cure any crappy connections which might be causing grounding, buzz or anything like that. And I usually, as I say, I usually start with suspecting the bits that move, because movement and electrics, solder do not mix at all. So that's step number 3, fixing and repairing electrical things and cleaning as we go, because it's nice to give somebody a fresh guitar that looks as new as it can look. And also, not such an issue with this one, but on older guitars it's fantastic to get rid of all the DNA from somebody else. Step number 4 in the 5-step setup is to restring it and stretch it. So while we were doing the fret leveling, we'll have these frets on and they will be sacrificial. The old strings will always be sacrificial. We'll use them to do the fret leveling because we need the guitar under load, and once we've done that we'll throw them away. And so step 4, once we've done the fixing and cleaning, we'll put some new strings on, and it's critical to make sure they are fully stretched, and I'll show you how to do that in step 4. That step, the stretching part of that step, is the biggest single impact you'll have on whether your guitar stays and plays in tune, along with how the nut slots are cut. If you get those two things right, your guitar will stay and play in tune. And all this legend and mythology about that you can't use a Strat tremolo, it puts it out of tune, has nothing to do with the tremolo. It has to do with the stretch that's still in the strings and crappy nut slots. So we'll take care of those early in the process, and we'll take care of stretching the slack out right in step number 4. And then finally, once we've stretched all the slack out, on the electric guitar we will intonate each individual string to make sure that that string is the correct length for the neck as fitted on this guitar. The reason we have to do that is, although the bridge is in a particular position and gives us a basic scale length for this kind of guitar, each string, because of its construction and thickness, has to be a slightly different length to intonate. And that intonation just means that when we play notes at any point on the fretboard, it means that those notes are true division, a correct and true division of the musical scale. And it's a very mathematical thing, but luckily we don't have to do it mathematically. We can rely on our ears or a tuner to do that for us, because luckily it just so happens that a pinged harmonic or a pinged harmonic on the 12th fret, or the fretted 12th note, should be the same as the open. And if it's sharp of the open or the pinged note, then it's the string is too short and we bring the bridge back, whether it's a Strat type or a Tune-o-matic. And if the fretted note is too low, then we shorten the string by bringing the bridge component forward. And we do that for each of the strings, and they're independent of each other. On certain Telecasters they're in pairs, and you can only do them in pairs. On some Telecasters there are 6 individual ones. On Tune-o-matic bridges they're all individual, although quite hard to adjust in my experience. And on acoustic guitars you don't really get a chance to adjust them at all, other than by making sure that the bridge is a pre-compensated, sorry, the saddle is a pre-compensated one. Anyway, that's the 5 steps: setting the action, leveling the frets and polishing them up. Number 3, cleaning, fixing, and cleaning and fixing and inspecting everything. Number 4 is restringing and stretching, and number 5 is setting the intonation. That's your 5 steps we'll cover in these videos to go with the ebook. So I hope you're going to enjoy it, and I hope you're going to get lots of great results using this method. As I said, I've used it probably more like 300 times now, the same method now. I've probably stabilized, and I'm using the same approach now at least for the last 100, maybe 150, and getting the same kind of results every time. So good luck, see you in the next bit for step 1 of the 5-step process, and that will be setting the action on this currently slightly unloved and slightly unlovable Stratocaster copy.